I don't know if you'd like to ask a question. We'll start with answer Con.
Yeah, Jeff, Dylan, just a maintenance day, expecting to play tomorrow.
Dylan, Phil, and Ronick, just maintenance days.
And I saw, was Smith back at practice, but is he still, you need some time here?
Yeah, he's non-contact right now, so I don't have an exact timetable, but obviously making his way closer to being available.
And would Grice be available tomorrow?
Grace available.
Just all season long, just talking about your defense, you've had the luxury, I guess you call it, of being able to pair righties and lefties together. Is that something that you take into consideration when making your lineup, or would you, if you wanted, if you're inclined, pair two lefties or two righties, would that be okay?
Well, first off, yes, we take that into consideration. I think all things being equal, they prefer both from a coaching perspective and a playing perspective, a lefty and a righty, all things being equal, especially for guys that haven't played the off much. Guy like Osterley has played the off a decent amount, so he's comfortable over there. But I think all things being equal, you'd like a lefty and righty. If there's a big separation between two players, then you go with the best available at that point. That's the best way I would explain it.
Also, Valeno's had a few games here to play with Verona. How do you think he's adjusted to that? And just what is your message to him when playing with a sniper like that?
Not necessarily anything different. I think my message with Joe is just more on Joe, making sure that he's improving as a player. I think, he's done a good job of transporting the puck. I think he needs to make sure that he's using his body to win more puck battles. That would be the area where I think there's area for improvement. I know that Verona has had lots of conversations. He talks a lot with his line mates, and they've tried to look at different ways to be successful there. Certainly, Verona made a couple of real nice plays this slot last night, and I think from Joe's perspective, he got the one. He's got to be ready to shoot that puck. My message is more based on Joe, the player, than who he's playing with.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yep. Max Boltman.
From the start of the year, you talked about kind of the question with Sider and Raymond was like, they're good, but how good are they going to be and how fast? I'm just curious, now that you've had 75% of the season here, how good are they and how fast have they become?
So it's always, first off, they're both really good players and they're both really good people, and I think real good winners. It's always a little bit tricky evaluating. I think what you have to do a little bit is look, okay, if we were let's just say the New York Rangers, they're a playoff team, or the Tampa Bay Lightning, who we just played, they're a playoff team. Where exactly would they fit? Where would they fit on the power play? What type of opportunities would they have had? Where would they fit today, given the growth they've had as a player? And I would let each of you kind of answer that question for yourselves. I'm not going to do that, but that's the bigger question. I don't think any of us want them to be good players on non-playoff teams. We want them to be good players on playoff teams, good players that can compete for a Stanley Cup. I think they've both played very, very well for their age. They've both had the positive impacts on our team. Our team is better because they're on the team. I really believe that. Now, how can help really push. I mean, ultimately, your team is driven by a team, but certainly your top end guys can help push you to that next level. And how quickly can they do that? And that's a lot to ask at young players. Like, you see a lot of young forwards having lots of success. You don't see as many young D having, the level of success that Moritz has had, and so I think, that speaks for itself, how good a year he's had. But, so ultimately, to answer your question, I can't really say, where they would sit on other groups. I would just say that I think they've both had positive impacts on our team this year.
Is there anything that's more challenging about developing guys when they are having, I guess, kind of like every team's going to have like a leading scorer at this point? If yours is leading scorers or close to it in their first year, does that make it harder than if they're maybe in the position of like the Valeno, where they're still fighting for the role that they probably want?
I think there is challenge in that, and there's also definite challenge on being a really good player on a team that's a non-playoff team, and understanding, because it's really, really hard to understand, okay, is this the type of hockey that's going to make you a great player on a playoff team? You know, and that's been one of the messages, and this isn't new to you know, our young players this year. This has been consistent over time, that let's not look at, you know, how you've done relative to the team, or, you know, where you're at points was, are we developing you as a winning hockey player, so that when we're a really good team, you're still going to have a big impact on the team. You're still going to be in a prime role on the team. And that's the message that I've tried to give these guys.
Thanks.
Yep.
Neil Boudat?
I'm just kind of curious, when a couple of years ago when Mo was drafted, you know, a lot of fans who were surprised, didn't understand. What were your thoughts then about how people were reacting? Was it that, you know, oh, we see the kid play, or I'm just kind of curious.
You know, obviously, I don't normally. I never really. The head coaches don't really get involved in the scouting of players, so sometimes you see players more than others. In this case, I had just seen Moritz at the World Championships, and certainly I thought there was a lot there, and he looked like a package that could be good. I hadn't seen him in the roles that our scouting staff had seen him in terms of running power plays and things like that. You know, my reaction, I think we always overreact at the draft, and we overreact to a bunch of different stuff, type, whatever it might be, we being everybody. And I think everybody, his best bet is to just wait and see and let guys show what they are. My own standpoint, I like the pick because I think too many times in the draft, from just an observer's point of view, once you get kind of put on a list, it seems to follow that list, and that's a hard way to hit home runs, you know, like, so I just like the fact that our management team and our scouting staff decided to take the player they, and you know, I heard a lot of people question it, and I wondered, first off, you know, I think a lot of people question because they weren't sure of the offense, but I thought to myself, man, if he could develop into a, you know, a 20+ minute player, defenseman that defends against the other team's best nights out there in the penalty kill first, that's a pretty good thing that we all want to have on our team. And then, you know, as it's kind of turned out, he's had way more offense than people thought. So I guess my answer would be, my thought was, yeah, that's awesome. Let's see how it turns out.
And what areas of his game do you think you'd like to see him improve on and really fine tune?
Yeah, I think for a young player, a young competitive player, he wants to win bad, and you're not winning enough. Sometimes you try to do too much. I think the biggest challenge for you know, Moritz is and I thought he did an excellent job of this last night. I thought for the most part in the game, he did a much better job of taking what's given and not trying to do too much, and still having a huge impact on the game, you know, so I just think that's probably the biggest thing is understand how to use his great attributes, understand how to use his poise, how to understand those, but make plays, make plays, and live another day when he's got to live another day.
Is that what you talked to him about on the ice?
Yeah, that was some of what I talked about. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And just overall about the core here, how do you feel about you know, the players you have, Larkin, Raymond, Sider, obviously? Yeah,
Bird I'd put in that mix. Yeah, you know, obviously Bird's had a big impact here as well. Well, I think first off, you know, if you look at some of those core young players or middle-aged players that we have, they're all really competitive people, really competitive, and so I think that's a great start. You know, and you want to make sure that you have guys who are going to work and compete, and if your best players work and compete, then everybody else follows suit. And I think for a large part through the season, that's why we were able to have successes. We worked and competed at a real high level. And we were able to play past mistakes. So, you know, I think it's we're in a better spot today than we were 2 years ago. I know that for sure in terms of the long-term outlook of the hockey club. But we got work to do.
Wayne St. James?
Jeff, with young defensemen, what's the challenge or balance in deciding they need to learn, but sometimes maybe they need to sit?
Well, I think there's probably a time to do both. I think depending on the impact they have on your team. You know, some guys have probably played themselves into position regardless. I don't look at birth certificates when I make the decision on who's playing. Certainly in certain young guys' cases, they might get a little bit, you know, when you're out of it at this time of year, they might get a little edge to playing just because we understand we're trying to figure out what they are and maybe help develop them as players. But in the end, I think some guys build enough in their arsenal or enough chits that even if they have a tough game, they're going to go back in because they've built up that trust or confidence, or they've earned that. And some guys are always on that edge of you know, if you have a good game, you're in, and if you don't, you might not be. I think there's always a balance between confidence and accountability in terms of when you take guys out. You know, sometimes it's good for them, but it also, you have to recognize that it you know, there's a chance that it might really hurt their confidence and it might take a while for them to get back. So I don't think it's, you know, I think there's probably two things at play when you're making lineup decisions: who's giving you the best chance to win that night, and also you know, looking at each guy's development, and this could be an older player, you know, what's going to help him over the course of a longer term, more than just one game.
And I know it's far from a tell-all rating, but, you know, Philip Hronik is -26. I mean, how do you evaluate that? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't think any of us want to be minus 26. I think we all like to be, you know, plus players. So, you know, I think Phil had a couple times this year where, you know, he did sit out. Did that help him? I can't answer that for sure. You don't know what the play would have been like the other way. I think Phil spent a period of time where he was playing real good for us. You know, so again, when I'm making lineup decisions or trying to help develop him the best we can, we're deciding, you know, how much a guy plays, what positions they're in, if they're in the lineup, if they're not in the lineup, whether it's Phil or anybody else. So, you know, ultimately, that's a while on the ice stat. It's not meaningless at all. I'm not saying that, but like any while on the ice stat, and there's a lot of them out there. It does have it dependent upon, you know, other people, both who you're playing against and who is on the ice with you. So, you know, in the end, I think Phil is played to a level where he'll be back in the game tomorrow night against Ottawa, I guess is what I would tell you.
And with Lindstrom, do you have a conversation with him? I mean, you pointed out last night, you know, it's hard to not take any penalties, but at the same time, though, those late penalties, and he's not the only one, but he was the one last night. Or do you just kind of hope that that lesson sits with him?
We don't hope on anything here. We have conversations with people when we think it's appropriate. And certainly, you know, my job is to tell them when they're on the path of doing it right and when they're on the path of not doing it right. Now, there's some times where, you know, I guess it's like parenting. Sometimes you have to harp, and sometimes, you know they made a mistake, and you leave them alone a little bit, and there's a feel to that, and coaching is a ton like parenting. So I certainly won't, you know, disclose whether or not I talked to Lindy about that or not, but we have constant conversations with our players in a lot of different areas to try to help them become the very best they can.
Thanks.
Yep. All right, those are all the questions we have here. Coach Blashill.